So the big story in the last couple days has been that Tucker Carlson is in Moscow, and he has been planning this trip for a long time because he has been wanting to interview Putin. Now, you're not going to find this anywhere else. So I'm just going to tell you, he's been wanting to interview Putin for a long time. And he has been trying, and he spoke about it publicly that they started wiretapping him and trying to spy on him when he was trying to do this before. But now the situation's kind of escalated a little bit because this is obviously a proxy war with Russia via Ukraine. And what we're seeing is that this is a very pivotal moment in geopolitics because, as I said, the US is trying to push a war with Iran, obviously pushing a war with Russia, and then China, and then pretty much the entire Middle East is on fire. And the reality is, somebody like Tucker Carlson, who has like 10 million followers on Twitter, which is where he platforms his videos now because he left Fox, has become a sort of figure that has seemed somewhat anti-establishment within the mainstream, right? He doesn't get everything right. I've criticized Tucker many times on immigration, borders. He's learned a lot, and at least he's given a platform to people like Anya, who have talked about imperialism and who have talked about the border issues and what happened in Venezuela. And I find that commendable. He's given a platform to Julian Assange activists. And I do commend that. And I do commend the fact that he has come to Russia to see what it's like, because there's a lot of people that will not step foot here in Russia because they're afraid for their careers or what could potentially happen to them. And I find that honestly cowardly. Because to me, it's like, well, if you're an actual journalist and if you want to do some sort of, journalism that is strong and that is controversial, but in the sense of maybe changing people's minds, you will do whatever it takes to go to the places you're talking about. So I do commend Tucker for going to the place that has been vilified by so many. And I think that what he's trying to do with Putin benefits Russia as well, because Putin would benefit from his message getting heard to Western audiences in a large platform. Obviously, we have people like me and others who work for RT and who have, a large-ish platform, but at the same time, it's nothing compared to what Tucker Carlson has. And he has the mainstream, the regular normies also watching him. Of course, many conservatives largely, but perhaps that is a way to get them to understand Putin's message, which is one of Russia first. And I've said this before when I was on Niko's show yesterday. Putin is a Russia first guy. Putin is a guy that is going to look out for the people of Russia. I don't really feel like we have that in the United States. And so I think right now, this pivotal moment, it's important that Putin's message gets heard on the wide range, which is why I think people are so anticipating this interview. Now, Tucker was filmed having left his hotel with equipment. Tucker Carlson likely will not be on any Russian media because it wouldn't help him when he goes back to the States. He's getting threats of all kinds. And if he goes on Russian state media, they could try to use that against him. So I highly doubt, from what I understand, that Tucker will be on any sort of Russian state media unless it was like a blogger that literally got a camera in front of him and followed him. So that's that. And there's a tweet. I want to show the reaction, fam, because I'll give it to you right now. I just want, if you have anything to say, but I do want people to see the hypocrisy of people's reactions when they fail to recognize that's a journalist or somebody. I didn't even consider him a journalist, but you could say he's doing journalism right now by going out there and interviewing people. He's been a presenter, a pundit, a figure like that. But he is going out there to interview people. So the way they're reacting to him trying to do actual journalism is really hilarious to me. It's also scary.
Well, it's the same argument they're going with, right?
Yeah.
This is bad. This is awful. This is, this is, once again, this is not being a free speech absolutist. And this is important right now. Wouldn't you want to hear a different side's perspective? I mean, it was almost this disgusting thing, I was in my doctor the other day, fam, and my mom was watching my episode of RT, which if you haven't seen it, ladies and gentlemen, go see it. I think I had a really good episode. I really was happy that I did my homework, went on the show, had a great time. I think it's the best show still on TV to this day. and Peter Lavelle does an amazing job. But then as I was leaving, some guy said, "Hey, I heard you were on RT and you were on Crosstalk." I was like, "Yeah." He goes, "I used to watch it all the time. It was such a great show and a good network, but they took it off Dish TV, and I haven't seen it since." And it was an older guy, right? Like, they don't make their way over to the computer. They don't know what Rumble is. They can't find this stuff. And it really is a shame because it's one of the biggest forms of censorship out there. Once again, we've been saying on the show for quite some time, it's never, ever the state's job to decide for you what is the truth and what is a false, what is a lie. That is up to we, the people. You know what I'm saying? And we should have as much open dialogue as possible. But there's a reason why they don't do this, and they've been getting away from this for quite some time, fam. And I think the reason why they were able to get away with this was a big push from the shitlibs that we knew who were all about cancel culture, who was all about, oh my God, you have to deplatform these people. The AOC peeps, you know what I'm saying? Remember the day after AOC wrote that letter telling people to go rat people out and get them deplatformed? That's when we've been demonetized. And we've been demonetized ever since. And I think that opened the gate for that. And that's what I'm saying. No matter what, no matter how you feel, you have to protect speech you don't like just as much as you're protecting speech you do like. Because if you do not protect speech that you don't like, eventually those censorship mechanisms will come for you. And that's what we're seeing over here. If you don't think that Tucker should interview Putin, then you are just anti-free speech. You're anti-freedom of a press. You are just, and I don't like to say this because I don't believe in absolutes, but you are seriously part of the problem.
And again, I don't care if it's Tucker or anyone else coming in to interview. I'm not like Tucker's #1 fan. I'm not, I understand what Tucker is, that he's still part of the mainstream. I'm not under any sort of idea that he's some sort of anti-imperialist journalist, but I do believe he has the right to interview. And I think it would actually help both people in the West understand Russia, and I think Russia would benefit much more. And that's exactly what they're afraid of. They're afraid for you all to hear what Putin is really like, how he thinks, how he is intelligent, and how he has managed to really run a country from the ground up, really. And you can see the growth in people coming back to Russia and from Americans coming to Russia and foreigners coming to live here. He's in America for a sky. He's not going to come and live here. I can pretty much say that with like security, unless something changed for him on the strip. I highly doubt that. Okay. But the reality is, I think what we're going to hear is pretty much what we've heard from all of us. This is not what we are told that you are told it is. Like, Russia is not what you are told it is. So, Bill
and
Crystal
by the way, fam,
said,
Bill Crystal, right? Bill Crystal, a neocon to the degree, got so many things wrong.
Yeah.
Wants to bomb Iran. He was all pro for the, I forgot what it's called, Operation whatever in Iraq. Yeah. I mean, this guy, and the thing about it is that you understand that we are in a completely controlled environment when guys like Bill Crystal, who got his ass handed to him by Scott Horton, you understand we're in a completely controlled environment if these guys are sticking around and their views are continuously pushed and showed and highlighted. I don't understand how he has 884,000 views, almost 1 million views on this comment right here whatsoever. But I'm just an unsophisticated, old-fashioned Scoop Jackson Democrat / John McCain Republican. Yeah, John McCain who wanted to bomb and go to war with every single country out there. It's just ridiculous.
So he said, I didn't like Jane Fonda going to Hanoi in 1972, and I don't like Tucker Carlson going to Moscow in 2024. But I'm just an unsophisticated, old-fashioned Scoop Jackson Democrat, John McCain Republican. And the next one, I want to go ahead and comment real quick, and let's just watch it because I think it's important. This woman, she is hailed as one of the greatest journalists of our time. And she literally does nothing but pander to the State Department talking points constantly. She's like a more serious Rachel Maddow, right? I'm talking about Erin Burnett. I think that's her name. CNN anchor, CNN. And these obviously, are my rivals, right? When we have people at RT, we do a different type of work. We're a little bit more, okay, well, let's see what the alternative viewpoint is, or we have people on, from a Palestinian point of view. And they even have Zionists on. Like I said, I've had to interview Zionists that I really didn't like. And so they don't do that on CNN unless it's something that they can control to show their own perspective. And they push and push and push their own agenda in every single aspect of every single interview. So this post by Colin Rugg, he said, CNN is fuming that journalist Tucker Carlson is doing journalism in Russia instead of spewing propaganda like CNN. Carlson was spotted in Russia this weekend as speculation swirls that he interviewed Vladimir Putin. CNN is livid. Putin is trying to court the MAGA GOP in the United States. In fact, one of the leaders of the MAGA GOP is in Moscow tonight. It's the man you see here with the MAGA leader, Donald Trump, Tucker Carlson, possibly there in Moscow to interview Putin, definitely there as a Putin supporting celebrity. Okay, so here's the thing. I knew they were going to go with this, right? Because Tucker Carlson is a Republican. He has been touted as a potential VP candidate for Trump. He clearly is a conservative, and he clearly has these conservative viewpoints. So obviously they were going to say, wow, Tucker is trying to make Trump win via the Kremlin. So they're going to go this whole route. It's very obvious that this is what they're going to do. But by the way, any of the transcripts you have seen are completely fake. None of those are real. None of that is real. So if you've been sharing that, don't, because it's not real. But aside from that, this whole thing that they're doing has already been done. They've already tried tying any sort of figure that talks to Putin as a Trump supporter or as a fascist, when clearly people are now, wait a minute, like, look what Biden is doing. He's about to start like 5 wars at the same time. Like, what's going on? So this doesn't work. It's not working anymore. The whole Trump is a fascist is not working anymore. And if you're still spewing that kind of rhetoric, you just sound insane to people who are literally living. I can't find a single person that I know that's a millennial or a Gen Zer that's actually like, yeah, so I support Biden, unless they're paid. I really haven't met anybody that's like, yeah, Biden is great.
And to just, before we watch this video over here, from a person who's watching a lot of mainstream media news right now, it's just so obvious that these people are not real journalists. They're just propagandists. What do you call them? The stenographers for the ruling class, for the ruling elite. They just come out there and try to push their rhetoric. And it's the talking points they come from. First of all, they never put themselves in a situation where there's someone who can justifiably oppose them, right? In a articulate way, in a nuanced type of way. Somebody who would have a lot of knowledge that can say, well, hey, let me just ask you about this, this, and that. In other words, a justifiable pushback, right? They won't do that. They just operate from a level where it's just these set of standards that are just obviously given to them by the propagandist. You know what I'm saying? Well, what about this and that? You can see the way they do their reporting, their interviews. It's always from a point of view of a mindset of where the ruling class wants you to be. Well, Hamas has been so awful, and what happened on October 7th. Okay, right? Do we want to talk about what happened before October 7th? Do we ever want to mention why October 7th happened? Never. It's always from it's just their world that they've been painting. You know what I'm saying? And it's very biased. It definitely leans towards war. I mean, you should see Fox News the way they're shitting themselves about Iran, right? You know what I'm saying? We played the other day, Senator John Kennedy from Louisiana, who was literally saying that Biden needs to grow a set of oranges because these people in Iran are just madmen that are crazy. They hate Americans and they want to drink our blood out of boots, right? So they start from this neocon mentality. There will never be somebody there to push back on himself. Well, Senator, what about the fact that we removed their democratically elected leader? It was the CIA's first coup when Mossadegh was there, and ever since, we implanted the Shah. They never talk about these things. There's never an effective, justifiable pushback. It's just from their jumping points and their talking points, and that's where they're coming from.
And a lot of them don't even know any of this information because they're literally just fed, they're literally just talking heads. And unfortunately, that's the way a lot of news works. And in mainstream, that's literally all it is. And that's all you get a lot of the times. And even in independent media, you have to really, not a lot of people know a lot of things. And that's, it's a learning process. I mean, we can't all know everything, right, at the same time. But these people, some of them don't know, and they don't care to know. They're not there to tell the truth. So
Well,
let's hear.
Also, too, as well, like just really quickly before we play the video, too, as well. When people in independent media like ourselves, right, who when we started this, whole shindig at the Convo Couch, a lot of it was about bringing the foreign policy aspect to the not the libertarians, to the progressives who really didn't have a lot of knowledge of foreign policy. But you know what? They don't want to listen to it. They don't want to learn. It's just boring to them. They'd rather talk about the culture wars and LGBTQ rights rather than understanding what's going on in Ukraine.
That goes on both ends.
What's that?
That goes on both ends. The progressives and the conservatives would rather talk about all those issues.
I'm pointing out from our perspective where we come from, where we were trying to explain to people what was going on in the Ukraine in 2014. Even my mother, when I was talking to the other day, when she says, well, what happened in 2014 in the Ukraine? People have no idea. They don't understand what Victoria Nuland did. And did you know that Victoria Nuland just arrived in the Ukraine to set the record straight? When Zelensky was trying to remove his top general, she's like, no. I'm going to stand by Zelensky. She exposed who is running the show in Ukraine, ladies and gentlemen.
In case you didn't know.
In case you didn't know.
Yeah. In case you didn't know who was running stuff since 2014. Okay. So let's hear from this woman. Unfortunately, you will have to hear it. And we'll talk about what she says in a second. You can go ahead and play it, Jimmy. Full screen if you can.
A massive shakeup in Kyiv coming as Putin is trying to court the MAGA GOP in the United States. In fact, one of the leaders of the MAGA GOP is in Moscow tonight. It's the man you see here with the MAGA leader, Donald Trump, Tucker Carlson. Possibly there in Moscow to interview Putin. Definitely there as a Putin-supporting celebrity. Just listen to how Russian state media is breathlessly celebrating his visit.
Independent journalist Tucker Carlson has flown to Russia from the U.S. via Turkey to Vnukovo Airport. He saw Spartacus Ballet at the Bolshoi Theater, had lunch in a nice restaurant, went for a ride around town, rode the subway. He charged his smartphone via a USB port and connected to a fast and free Wi-Fi internet.
He charged his phone, although they're knowing the details about the fact that it was during USB port may give him reason to think twice about all of this. But look at them talking about him like a celebrity. Everything he does on camera, breathlessly repeated. Now, it is unclear if an interview between Putin and Carlson will take place, but if it does, it gives Putin a chance to sit down with a big supporter.
It might be worth asking yourself, since it is getting pretty serious, what is this really about? Why do I hate Putin so much? Has Putin ever called me a racist? Has he threatened to get me fired for disagreeing with him? Does he eat dogs? These are fair questions, and the answer to all of them is no. Vladimir Putin didn't do any of that.
I'll actually always remember watching that clip. I was standing in Ukraine 48 hours before the war began there. Well, Carlson then stood by Putin consistently all the way through. And that is why he can go to Moscow now without any fear of being summarily imprisoned. He's a hero. This was Putin's mouthpiece in the United States, somebody who had turned a blind eye to the atrocities committed by Putin because they were happening far away. Once vibrant towns turned to ruins, mass graves with dozens of bodies in the Kyiv suburbs, a theater full of innocent women and children sheltering, bombed, despite the giant world children written on the roof, more than 200,000 Ukrainian soldiers killed or injured. And tonight, Putin is trying to seize on the fact that Zelensky's military appears to be in turmoil, capitalizing on a moment of intense American political dysfunction and intensifying.
Okay, I think that was enough for you all to get the picture as to what Erin here is doing. Because, I mean, first of all, she can come to Russia anytime. She's not going to be imprisoned. She might be questioned heavily at immigration as a CNN reporter that has been spewing the fact that, oh, Russians are killing Ukrainians and look at all these dead Ukrainians, but doesn't talk about how many innocent civilians were killed in Donbass, 14,000 of them, at least, in 2014 and beyond until 2022. And then, of course, since then, there have been more civilian casualties. There was a bakery soon after I left Lugansk. There was a bakery that was struck in Lysychansk. She doesn't go to these areas and reports in the Donbass. She doesn't talk to anybody on the other end of the spectrum. I would gladly go to Ukraine, actual Ukraine, and report, but I honestly would be in danger, as we know, right? What has happened to people who have tried to tell the truth in
Gonzalo
Ukraine.
Lira,
So,
yeah.
among I mean, others, so many Russian journalists that have been executed, and civilians
Totally,
that have been
totally.
executed. So it's just insane to me. But there she goes, spewing the same look. He's the Kremlin's guy, blah blah blah. And again, she acts like she actually was doing any sort of reporting, saying she was in Ukraine. And the thing is, this is predictable. That they're going to tie Putin to Trump, and at the end of the day, Trump's record with Russia wasn't even that great. But they completely ignore that, and they go on, oh, okay, yeah, this is Trump Kremlin ties. But again, guys, it's just so you can tell, you can see through it at this point.
Yeah.
It doesn't work. It's not working. People are like, wait a minute, what's wrong with Tucker going there? Didn't Barbara Walters go and interview so many adversarial, people that we consider controversial leaders? Fidel Castro has been interviewed. So many people have been interviewed, and Putin himself has been interviewed by the mainstream media before the special military operation. And why weren't you mad that these CNN anchors and NBC anchors got to interview Putin then? Well, they weren't mad about it because things have changed. And now the things Putin says in the perspective of the war in Ukraine and the perspective of the entire geopolitical stage has changed. And therefore, they're afraid that you might hear that we actually have, well, the Russians have a competent leader in Russia, and they might, be afraid of you realizing what you don't have, and the things that you've been told are a lie. And that's exactly why they're so angry and so afraid.
Well, there's a few things I want to point out. Number one, you said it doesn't work anymore. I don't think it's working on the mainstream as much as it might have done one time before. You got to remember, fam, we grew up with all this propaganda. It was even in our movies, right? Sylvester Stallone, and peace be with Carl Weathers, who is Apollo Creed, who just passed away the other day. May he rest in power. We love him. Rocky fought the Russian, right? The Russian bear. And it was, like I said, I'll never forgive Rocky, Sylvester Stallone, for making me root for the Mujahideen in Rambo 3, right? What I'm trying to say is they've implemented this Russia's the bad guy even in our movies, right? They've done this for quite some time. So the programming is there. But however, I think you are right about one thing. It is not working on the mainstream as the way it used to. However, it is working for the people who want their confirmation bias. It's still more the same. There are people out there, no matter what, who are going to be, well, how could you say it? I mean, come on, it's Russia. Of course they're going to try to steal our election. And of course Putin's going to try to kill us and whatnot. They're awful. So it will feed the people in the confirmation bias. But other than that, I believe you are right that it's working less and less each time. It's less effective. There are a couple of reasons, though, I figure out why are they still doing this. Well, number one, they can do this because they're never, what we said, they're never going to put themselves against an opposing view, somebody who can push back against them. So they're protected. Just like the politicians protect themselves, where they won't ask questions to people outside who, outside the mainstream media who can ask them tough questions. We know this because that one time we got in the room with the DNC, when we asked Kamala Harris a question, you can see the look in her face. It looked like she'd just seen a ghost when I was asking her a question. And I'll never forget that. You can tell she was like saying to herself, who the hell is this? What are they going to ask me? What am I going to do if they ask me this? Oh, no, I got to think on my toes. So number one, protection. They're going to protect themselves from any opposing view for anybody who can push back, right? Number two, there's no accountability. Rachel Maddow never had to pay any type of fine or fee or face demonetization like we have, or have to go and apologize for spreading these lies that the Russians were trying to hack into our grid and freeze the nation out. Stuff like that. There's no accountability. But the number one reason, fam, working backwards 3, 2, 1 is because they have nothing else to go on. They got nothing to push back. Yeah. It's just like
too late.
It's just like when watching the mainstream media sit there trying to, they can't sit there and praise Joe Biden. If anybody does a good job at it, it's Gavin Newsom, right? Like he'll throw out all this bullshit really quickly and say these things, and people will then go and repeat those things, not even knowing what they're about. This act, that act. He'll even praise the IRS getting extra money and still acting like they're going after big corporations when they hired more IRS agents to go after you, right? So the thing is other than that, they have nothing in their playbook. They got nothing else to push back against, right? Because if you start talking about the truth, right, and instead of throwing out the lies, which we've seen this CNN reporter do, and I don't even know who she is. I've seen her a couple of times, fam, but I don't even remember.
She's quite famous.
These people, they're interchangeable, right? They're just talking heads.
Yeah,
You don't know who they are. You remember Fee and Pasta. You remember Fee because she's smart. You remember Pasta because he's good looking. But you don't remember who these people are because they have nothing else to push back on. They have no other plan because there's nothing to go by. And there's never accountability, and there's never somebody to push back against them. That's why Nancy Pelosi can get away with saying, oh, this is Putin's message out there. People who are asking for a ceasefire, they're not even pro-Palestinian. They're anti-murder. They're anti-genocide. They're anti-death. That's what they are when they're in the streets. She even had to go stoop that low to say that those people are spewing Putin's message. And then what did she do when they were at her house? She's like, go back to China. I mean, these people got nothing. And it's why we talk about elections so much, because if we did have a mechanism which we can remove these people on that was fair, transparent, and effective,
they wouldn't be there
anymore. They wouldn't be there to say these things, ladies and gentlemen. That's why we have an 18% approval rate, which is up for Congress, 18% approval rate for Congress, but a 90%, close to a 90% retention rate for them. It makes zero sense, ladies and gentlemen. But that's why you're going to continue to see this stuff. And really, to tell you the truth, it's disgusting. It really is at this point, because that's another nuclear-armed nation, right? That is something that is true right there, that they are a powerful nation, that they are a strong nation. Same with China. And you're having this rhetoric out there. You don't care as a mainstream media journalist. You're not a journalist. You're just a propagandist feeding people who they're confirmation biased, and people who are just getting involved, fam. And that's another thing too as well. People who are starting to dip in the door, they look at that stuff and they start to wonder. That's why it's so important that you folks out there support shows like this, support people like this, because we're going to bring you the truth no matter what, no matter how much it hurts. We might not be right or wrong, or you might not agree with us on everything, but, you know, at least we're out there telling the truth. These people out there are just pure 100% propagandists, and the whole mechanism of mainstream media is to keep you divided, fighting your neighbor, not looking up, just looking across the way.
Absolutely. I don't know what else to say to that, because it's all true. So I agree with you 100%. And they're going to keep trying this tired old route, right, of going after and saying Trump is tied to Putin, when that's just not the reality. And again, I look forward to this interview. I'm sure Tucker has interviewed others while he was here because he's in Russia. So there are other figures he could interview, and I look forward to whatever he was able to do. And like I said, I don't watch him religiously. I don't think I've actually seen a full one of his interviews yet. But I think this is an interview that will appeal to a lot of people who want to hear what Putin has said from, you know, an American former talk show host of the largest, most popular program on Fox News, asking him questions that a lot of Americans are wondering, and a lot of people in general are wondering. And I think that would be something that the entire world could, you know, benefit from listening to, at least to a degree, and we can judge it, of course, afterwards. And I think it should happen. I think people should be interviewing figures that are controversial, that are oppositional, that are, you know, and ask questions that are maybe challenging. You know, these are things that you should want to do as a journalist. They don't want to do that because it would put dents in all of their entire narrative. And hearing Putin's perspective is going to put a dent on the entire Ukraine narrative more than it's already happened, because they've already, you know, it's already falling apart. And by the way, Ukraine is pretty much collapsing right now, guys. I mean, the Russians have taken over pretty much almost Avdiivka. They have really surrounded Ukraine. Ukraine is actually trying to recruit women now into the army because they've run out of men, because so many have died. This is a slaughter of Ukrainians, and the United States doesn't care. And we know, and like I said, I just finished the translations for my interview of these soldiers that were captured from Ukraine by the Chechens, and they were clearly afraid of saying anything, because when they go back, what happens to them, right? it's you see it in their faces. Some of them did talk, and you see some of the things they say. And I'm telling you, this is the kind of stuff you have to hear. And this is the kind of stuff that you don't see. And of course, platforms that are smaller, we can only do so much, but at least having Putin's voice out there, I think, will be interesting for the American public to hear.
I think that somebody mentioned in the chat earlier, really quickly, to put a bow on this section right now, too, as well. Oliver Stone interviewed Putin. I watched those interviews. They were pretty freaking amazing. And what did the mainstream media kind of grasp onto? What did the shit libs grasp onto? Putin made like a distasteful comment about women. Like, he did say, he goes, well, then I would be a woman or something like that, saying about then. And Oliver Stone was talking about being emotional, right? So I don't think it was the best comment out there. But once again, it was like people took that, clung on to that, and didn't understand everything else he was saying. And if you look at Putin's story too, when he was talking about the first time they offered him the VP, and he turned it down, and they asked him, like, what was going through your mind? He goes, I was scared. I was nervous for my family. I didn't know what was going to happen. You know what I'm saying? Putin was put into play and picked there, and then backed by a lot of his people, because he was the most balanced person at that particular time, where the hardliners wanted him in, but the other people wanted him in as well. You know what I'm saying? It wasn't just the hardliners that wanted to put him into power. It was a coalition of people who thought that Putin was the best person out there. And really, when people say, well, why do you like Putin so much? You're always talking highly of him. Is because I do appreciate his thought process of always going with international law. Lavrov, the same thing. It's like anytime they try to push a point when it comes on the world stage, on the global stage, they always refer to, well, this is what the law is. This is what we should do, right? Even with the situation going on now in Gaza, they're referring to what was agreed upon in 1967. This is what's agreed to. Why don't we go? You know what I'm saying? That's what I admire a lot about Vladimir Putin, the way he handles global affairs, and he is that type of nationalist that people talk about. Oh, nationalism bad and twisting, but he loves his country, it seems, and he wants to do what's best for Russia at all the time. And I wish we had presidents that want to do what's best for us, our people, rather than do what's best for their donors. And that's the shame what's going on. Yeah. That's the crux of the whole situation.
Yeah. Yeah, and like I said before, Russia isn't perfect. There's oligarchs here that control a lot of things, and Putin has that problem himself, and that is no secret. And that's a problem all over the world. And being here, you realize that you still have that same type of issue when it comes to the oligarchy. It hasn't changed. This is why I am from the ideology that I am, and so this is why I don't believe that's a problem that's only in one country. That's a problem that is, global. And I think people need to understand that. But nevertheless, I do think Putin, actually does what is best for Russia. And we don't have that, as Pasta said, in the US. And I wish we did, but we don't. So